Hi guys, it's Pete back again with another quick review for you. You can see here I am wearing my Batman t-shirt. I'm a huge fan of Batman, I always have been, and today I'm reviewing the animated film of The Killing Joke, which is adapted from Alan Moore's graphic novel of the same name that came out in the 80s. The original comic book is considered one of the best Batman stories of all time. It's a lot of people's very favourite Batman story. It's got a lot of critical acclaim, and the last few years they have been doing quite a lot of these DC animated movies that are slightly more adult edge to them. I was a huge fan of the original Batman animated series in the 90s, thought it was excellent, and then these DC animated movies are very much in that vein, but they're able to kind of do things with a little bit more of a darker edge, with a little bit more violence to them. So it's good that they're getting finally this being made, which is the first actually R-rated animation, which is great because I'm always pushing for animation to be a little bit more adult orientated, and this is a brilliant way of actually doing it. So it's a feature, well, sort of feature length one shot. It's a perfect story to do, really. It really fits what we're trying to do with these DC animated movies, and because it's obviously so acclaimed. We've got Mark Hamill back as the Joker, which is brilliant. He's always going to be the definitive voice of the Joker for me. Comic book itself is fantastic. I'm a huge Alan Moore junkie. I love all of his comics. I love V for Vendetta, Watchmen, From Hell. He is my #1 favourite comic writer, so I do love The Killing Joke. It's not, on a scale of Alan Moore stories, it's not the best one he's ever done, I don't think, but on a scale of Batman stories, it is considered to be very good, and I have a lot of affection for it. So when this was getting turned into an animated movie, I was immediately really interested, and I saw some of the trailers, and I really, really liked what I saw. It looked like we're getting a very faithful recreation of A Killing Joke, so I'm going to jump straight on into it, and it will contain a little spoilers here. So I have to say, though, that even though I was really anticipating it, there were some parts of this movie that I really didn't like. And mainly that's the first act. In fact, it's probably one of those films where it really benefits from having it on a Blu-ray or DVD, because I know if I ever watch this movie again, I will literally skip the first act, and I never do that with anything. I always sit and watch something all the way through from beginning to end, but in the case of this, the first act feels so tacked on, and it just doesn't work. I mean, the idea behind it, I understand, is because the story involves something pretty terrible happens to Barbara Gordon, who's Batgirl in the original Killing Joke story, and so what they've done is they've tacked on a sort of a first chapter to show you Barbara Gordon as Batgirl and show what she does, so that later on in the movie you'll be a little bit more upset at what happens to her. But the way that they do it is just really, really poor. I mean, the villain that's brought in is really weak. The whole thing really literally is its own little story that doesn't link to anything else in the actual Killing Joke, and it really doesn't feel like this is how the movie should have started. I mean, the Killing Joke is a short comic book, and really this should have just been that. I don't think you needed this whole 20 minutes, half an hour of Batgirl. I mean, we don't want to watch. There's nothing wrong with an animated Batgirl movie, but not in this guise. You don't sneak it into something that, like, it just doesn't need to be there. And the way that it's done is terrible. I mean, it doesn't really do the Batgirl character much justice either, because it hints that she has this relationship with Batman, which is completely out of character for both her and for Batman, which completely threw me for a loop. I'm like, Batman doesn't get into relationships, especially not with people who he's teammates with, people who he's a mentor to. It seems really pervy, completely out of character for Batman. And there was an odd sort of sex scene as well, which is again completely inappropriate. And I know that they can do this stuff because it's R-rated, but it feels sometimes like they're doing it just because they can. But it made no story or narrative sense for it to happen. And it really, what it did do, as well as damage Batgirl's character and the way that she came across, it really damaged what I thought of Batman, because in the first act, Batman, he does behave harsh sometimes, but he's always got a really good reason for the way he behaves. But in the first act of this movie, he was just behaving like an arsehole. I'm like, this is not a version of Batman I've ever seen or recognised, to be honest. He's like bossing her around, he's telling her 1 minute that she can't work this case and that she's not good enough, and he's really sort of telling her, like, this is, you do what I say or else. And I'm like, Batman is not like that. He's not like that without a very good reason. And the fact that he could sort of then contradict himself by telling her what she should be doing and saying that she's not ready, and then going against his own morals by sort of sleeping with her, it just doesn't make any sense for Batman to do that. And so it really damaged Batman, my impression of Batman in this movie, more than anything else. I just felt this isn't Batman to me. He's not behaving like the Batman I know, or the Batman in any of the comics or any of the films or anything. It just really didn't seem in his character whatsoever, just to behave like an absolute arse. I'm like, it really brings me into the movie not liking the Batman character, and that's the first time I've ever felt like that. So that first act was really, really damaging, both for Batgirl's character and for Batman. But once the first act is out of the way, as I said, from about the 45-minute mark, it's excellent. Like the actual, when it gets onto the actual story of the Killing Joke, which is to do with the Joker kidnapping Commissioner Gordon, and then he does this horrible thing to Barbara Gordon to try and turn Commissioner Gordon insane, because his whole idea is that everyone is just one bad day away from being him. Basically, he had a really bad day, it sent him insane, and so he's trying to show that anyone could be him given the right circumstances. And you do also get a bit of an origin for the Joker as well, which I'm okay with, because that is directly from a comic book, and although the Joker works better without an origin story, this is the one origin story that people accept as being a potentially good origin for the Joker. And it is a one-off, one-shot movie, so at the end of the day, this is just a possible way that the Joker could have had an origin, if you want to ever think about it like that. And that is done very, very true to the comic book. It's done very, very well. So really, the rest of the movie is very well animated. Obviously, Mark Hamill kills it as the Joker. It's good to see him be a very, very sadistic and horrible version of him, because his versions in the animated series obviously had to get curtailed a bit. He was a bit more wacky and a little less deadly, because he couldn't get away with him being a really dark character in a kids' TV show. So it's really good to see him as a fully fledged, menacing, horrible Joker in this. And I really think that as well, that like, despite what they did with Batgirl, trying to give her a bit more character and a bit more stuff in the first act, I really think that you felt enough for her anyway. I mean, there's a slight preamble bit anyway, which shows her spending a bit of time with Commissioner Gordon before it all happens. And really, I think that's all you needed. You only needed a little scene with her at the beginning, just to establish who she was, establish her connection to Commissioner Gordon. The whole first act doesn't really... I would still have been just as shocked if it had happened like in a graphic novel, where you don't get a lot of a build-up. And the build-up they gave her in the first act didn't really make her a particularly strong character anyway. So I don't know what DC were thinking doing that. That first act feels like a completely different movie, completely shoehorned in. The rest of it is excellent, and it sticks, I say, very close to the comic. And so I just really, when watching it, in order to sort of enjoy it, all I did was just erase that first act from my memory. I'm like, I'm gonna view this as, from like the 30-minute mark in, I think it is, this is what the Killing Joke is, and this is where I'm going to say the film starts. So with that in mind, I'm going to give this, I'm probably going to give it a 7 out of 10. I mean, it would have been a 9 out of 10 if it wasn't for that terrible first act. I should probably rate it a bit higher. I would watch it again. I would own it again, but I think it's just a case of I would have to skip that first act, because for me it was so awful and out of character that it really didn't feel like it belonged in a movie that was called The Killing Joke. And it was very sneakily hidden away, because in the trailers and stuff for it, they didn't show any of those bits. They just showed the bits that were taken directly from the graphic novel. So I thought that was what we were getting, and it's always disappointing to go into something expecting one thing and getting something else. I mean, sometimes it's good to subvert those expectations, but in this way it was like done in such a poor quality way that it sort of puts you off the rest of the movie a little bit, and I think the rest of it does suffer a bit as a consequence. No matter how good it's done, it doesn't really justify that first act. And the sexual politics going on just feel really weird and awkward. It doesn't... I don't know what the hell they were thinking. So, overall, I'm going to give it a 7 out of 10. A little bit more disappointing than I wanted it to be. Like I say, once it gets going in the second half, it's brilliant, and it was everything that I liked. So, I did enjoy it, but I really could only enjoy it to watch it again if, as I said, I skipped that first bit, because it dragged the movie down so much for me that I was really, really surprised and weirded out by what they were doing. It was completely odd. I don't know what they were thinking. So, yeah, if you're a huge Batman fan, it's probably worth checking out. It's probably really only worth checking out for the huge Batman fanboy geeks like me, though. Really, I don't really see it having a huge market outside of that. I mean, if you love the Batman movies and you're interested, I just say read a comic book, because it is a one-shot comic book that you don't need to have any prior knowledge for. You can just read it as its own story, and it's much better because of the fact it doesn't have that whole stupid first act. And that would be my way into it. I would recommend checking out the comic if you're completely unfamiliar, and then if you really love the comic and you really, really want to see it animated, then, chuck a couple of quid and either rent it or buy it. But just bear in mind that first act is, in my opinion, really let it down. So it's a shame, because I was expecting this to be sort of a 10 out of 10, and it would have been a 9 or a 10 out of 10 if it hadn't got that terrible first bit. So I'm not going to go over it anymore. I'm just going to say The Killing Joke, it's worth checking out if you're a huge Batman fan. I don't think it's necessarily worth checking out if you're not. And if you're slightly curious, like I say, pick up the comic book and see what you think, because it's only cheap as well, and it's a really easy read, but it is a brilliant comic, and this is a very, very faithful, very good adaptation. So yeah, that's my review for Batman the Killing Joke. I don't normally do straight to DVD reviews, but this one did get a little of a theatrical release, so I thought it sort of qualified for it. Plus, I'm a huge Batman geek, so anything that's to do with Batman or superheroes, I'm really, really into. I'm always going to have to check it out and give you guys my thoughts on it. So that's my thoughts on Batman the Killing Joke. I will see you guys soon for another review. Catch you later.